comrades, a Boer man openly declared that Boers are the rightful owners of South Africa, rejecting any idea of unity with black South Africans. There's a certain amount of people which wants to create a nation of unity, and then there's us, the Boers. We don't take part in this, and we're not going to go away. And we, the rightful owners of this land. Yes, you heard that right. Not only does he believe in a separate land for Boers, but he also dismisses the idea of sharing a country equally. And we have the footage to prove it. But it gets even deeper. The shocking part isn't just what he said, it's the disturbing history that backs up this dangerous mindset. And today, we're exposing the truth that many don't want you to hear. There's a certain amount of people which wants to create a nation of unity, and then there's us, the Boers. We don't take part in this, and we're not going to go away. And we, the rightful owners of this land. So that doesn't mean we doesn't see the sun shine over other people. Okay, if you go back in history, you would actually see that the Boers have negotiated with the tribal chiefs and the kings. And we have, seen them as equal, and we have, given them the peace. Okay, now on, we can hear you. If we want, one country, we must first accept the realities. Help me understand something. If we're going to live in the same country but you don't want unity, how do we do it? We never wanted unity. No, I accept what you're saying. I accept that that's what you said. What I'm saying is, then how do we live in one country? Oh, that's very easy. Okay, we can, live in this country happily if we have proper borders. So if the Boers have their land, and the Xhosas have their land, and the Zulus have their land, we do not want to mix. Leave Johannesburg for the cosmopolitans and all this, sounds like a part properly. Yes. Okay, all right. Let me hear what my painlists have to say. Did you hear that? This is not some random bar conversation. This is a mentality deeply rooted in South Africa's painful history, a history of land dispossession, of white entitlement to African soil, and of a refusal to acknowledge the brutal oppression of black people. This is the same thinking that fueled apartheid, the same thinking that justified the forced removals, the past laws, the massacres, the segregation. And now, in 2025, this dangerous ideology still exists. Let's break this down. For centuries, the Boers have claimed land in South Africa as their own. But let's be real, where did that land come from? How was it acquired? Through violence, through theft, through colonial conquest. Yet today, some still insist that the Boers have a divine right to land that was taken by force. Let's take a trip back in time. The Boers, originally Dutch settlers, arrived in South Africa in 1652 under Jan van Riebeeck. They didn't come here peacefully. They expanded their control through war, displacement, and deception. They clashed with the indigenous Khoisan, the Xhosa, the Zulu, our ancestors, the rightful stewards of this land. By the 1800s, when the British took over the Cape Colony, the Boers felt threatened. That's when they embarked on the infamous Great Trek, establishing their so-called Boer republics. They fought brutal wars against African kingdoms, stealing land and establishing white supremacist rule wherever they went. And when they lost to the British in the South African War, what happened? The same Boers who today cry about being victims struck a deal with their former enemies. Instead of fighting the British, they decided to unite against the true enemy in their eyes, black South Africans. That's how apartheid was born. I would be interested in hearing how white people process the emotional baggage of what their ancestors did. I would be interested in trying to understand what it did to white families. How much silence did white people have to cope with? How did white people build a shield around themselves to be able to deal with the system in which whiteness operated all these years? That's an emotional conversation. That's a delicate conversation. I'd be willing to do the work of trying to unravel that. Because right now, as a black person, I'm trying to do the work of unraveling my own baggage, my own historical baggage. I think when white people start to do that work, then we'll start to begin the project of trying to understand how all of us belong to this place. But you can't erase history. We can't pretend the violence didn't happen. We can't pretend colonialism didn't happen. We can't pretend people weren't slaves. We can't pretend our people are not poor. It happened. It happened. I'd be willing to hear white people say, you know what? It was CAC trying to pretend that this situation was normal. But I'm not hearing white people do that. This is what they don't want to talk about. They want to act like history started yesterday, like the Boers simply found the land as if no one was living here, but we refuse to erase history. Let's talk about the idea of unity. How can we be united when one side refuses to acknowledge the sins of the past? How can we be united when one group claims they own the land while millions of black South Africans still live in poverty, still wait for land reform, and still struggle for economic justice? Now, some of these extremists will say, oh, but the Boers negotiated with African kings. We saw them as equals. That's a blatant distortion of history. Yes, there were negotiations, but what they don't tell you is that these so-called negotiations were often held at gunpoint, with colonialists forcing chiefs into deals that favored the settlers. They don't tell you about the many leaders who resisted, who were killed or imprisoned for standing their ground. They don't tell you about the countless communities forcibly removed from their lands, stripped of their dignity. And when apartheid ended in 1994, did the land miraculously return to its rightful owners? No. The economic system remained in white hands. The land question was never properly resolved. Now, decades later, we still have white landowners sitting on stolen property while millions of black people remain landless. Fast forward to today, and land ownership statistics in South Africa are still heavily skewed. Despite being the majority population, black South Africans still own only a fraction of the land. Meanwhile, white landowners, many of whom are descendants of the very Boers who conquered this land, continue to hold vast farms, estates, and industries. Yet instead of acknowledging this injustice, some want to claim that they are the real victims, that they are the ones being marginalized, that they are the ones who need to separate themselves from the rest of South Africa to live in their own exclusive Boer state. This is nothing new. The Orania Project, a whites-only settlement in South Africa, is built on the same toxic ideology that this Boer man in the clip is pushing. They don't want unity because unity means justice. And justice means giving back what was stolen. Comrades, this is why the struggle continues. This is why Julius Malema and the EFF fight so hard for land expropriation without compensation, because justice cannot wait any longer. The ANCDA coalition has failed us. They have betrayed the revolution. They sold out long ago. And the DA? They have always stood on the side of white privilege. The GNU is nothing but a government designed to protect the economic interests of the elite while black South Africans are left with nothing. This is why we must mobilize. We must push for policies that take back the land and redistribute it to the people. We must reject the lies that the Boers negotiated fairly. We must call out the hypocrisy of those who cry about unity while refusing to confront historical truth. The struggle for land is the struggle for freedom. If we do not fight for our land, we will remain tenants in our own country forever, begging for scraps at the table of the oppressor. So, comrades, what do you think? Should we still be debating with those who refuse to acknowledge history, or is it time to take action? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments. Share this video. Let the world know the truth. We are not visitors in our own land. We are the rightful owners. And the time for justice is now.